Welcome to Translator, where reading turns into watching and stories come alive. The moment his phone buzzed with the final reminder, his chest tightened like a locked vault. One missed word, one misunderstood gesture, and a deal worth more than most lifetimes would evaporate. He had conquered markets, bent odds, and silenced boardrooms. But now, standing inside a sunlit restaurant with white tablecloths and quiet clinks of glass, a billionaire felt something far rarer than fear. He felt helpless. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet heroes who change lives when no one is watching, take a second right now to like this video. Share it with someone who needs hope, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this only matter if we pass them on. The restaurant hummed with the soft confidence of money and expectation. Outside, a city breathed with glass towers and trimmed hedges, but inside, everything felt fragile. The billionaire had arrived early, hands steady, mind rehearsed. But the one person he had insisted on bringing had not arrived. The translator, the bridge between cultures, the voice that would turn intentions into agreements, was missing. Traffic, a missed flight, a sudden illness. The reason didn't matter. The clock did. Across the table sat potential partners from a country whose language he did not speak, whose customs he respected deeply but understood imperfectly. Their faces were calm, reserved, observant. The billionaire smiled with practiced warmth, nodded with measured confidence, and prayed the silence wouldn't expose the storm in his chest. He had built an empire by mastering details. He remembered the year his first startup almost collapsed, the nights he slept in an office chair, the mornings he woke with numbers etched into his dreams. He remembered how power had felt like control back then, like a steering wheel in steady hands. Today, power felt like a mirage. He watched the waitstaff glide between tables, saw reflections in polished cutlery, felt the room tightening as minutes slipped away. Without words, meaning thinned. Without meaning, trust eroded. He sensed the partner's patience testing itself against tradition and time, and he felt the deal teetering, not from greed or strategy, but from something painfully human: miscommunication. The first course arrived, plated with elegance. The billionaire bowed slightly, hoping the gesture would speak for him. He tried to read the room through expressions and posture, through pauses and nods. He leaned on universal manners, on kindness he believed could translate itself. Still, the air thickened. The partners spoke softly among themselves, glancing at him with polite curiosity. He could feel his pulse in his ears. For the first time in years, he was not the smartest person in the room, not because others were smarter, but because he could not hear them. Then she appeared, not as a miracle, not with trumpets, but with a tray balanced easily and a presence that felt steady. The waitress moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had learned to watch people closely. Her uniform was simple, her hair neatly braided, her eyes attentive without being intrusive. She set down a glass with care and noticed the tension like a crack in porcelain. She had grown up listening more than speaking, reading moods the way others read menus. Something in the billionaire's posture, the careful smiles, the searching eyes, told her this table carried weight. She had learned the language years ago in a small apartment above a shop, translating movies late at night while her family slept. It had never felt like a skill worth mentioning. It was just something she loved, something that helped her feel closer to a world beyond her street. As she poured water, she heard a phrase drift across the table, familiar as a memory. She paused, breath held, then continued, unsure whether to step beyond the invisible line between service and intrusion. The tension grew heavier. The partners leaned back, their faces courteous but closing. The billionaire felt the ground slipping. He thought of the employees whose futures hinged on this meeting, the communities that would benefit, the promise he had made to himself to build something lasting and fair. He felt smaller than he had in decades. Then the waitress returned with a plate, her hands steady, her decision made. She leaned slightly closer, respectful, careful, and offered help without drama, without expectation. She did not announce herself as a savior. She simply bridged the gap that had swallowed the room. The shift was almost imperceptible at first. A nod, a softening of shoulders, a spark of recognition. Words found their way across the table like light finding a window. The billionaire watched as meaning reassembled itself. He felt gratitude swell, not loud, not flashy, but deep and grounding. The partners responded, their expressions warming, their posture opening. What had been stiff became fluid. What had been polite became sincere. Plates cooled unnoticed as ideas took shape, as intentions aligned, as trust took root. The waitress remained near enough to help, far enough to remain invisible. She translated not just language, but tone, context, respect. She understood that some ideas needed gentler framing, that pauses carried meaning, that honor was as important as profit. The billionaire listened like a student, humbled by how easily she navigated a space he had nearly lost. He saw his own reflection differently now, not as a titan, but as a man dependent on others, on kindness, on the invisible threads that hold the world together. As the meeting unfolded, the room seemed to brighten. Sunlight shifted across the floor. The hum of the restaurant faded into a soft backdrop. The partners smiled more freely. The billionaire felt a knot loosen in his chest. The deal, once fragile, now felt alive. He realized how thin the line was between failure and success, and how often it was crossed by people whose names never make headlines. When the final course arrived, the table carried a different energy. Relief mixed with something richer, something like respect. The billionaire felt a quiet awe for the waitress who had stepped forward when it would have been easier to step back. He thought about the stories we never hear, the talents tucked away in ordinary days, the courage it takes to offer help without being asked. The agreement came together not with fireworks but with understanding. The partners stood, offering gestures of appreciation that needed no translation. The billionaire felt a swell of emotion he had not expected. He had come prepared to negotiate terms, to measure margins, to secure an outcome. He left having learned a lesson far more valuable. Power did not always announce itself. Sometimes it wore an apron and moved through a room unseen. After they departed, the restaurant returned to its rhythm. The waitress cleared plates, her face calm, her heart racing just a little. She had done what felt right. She did not expect recognition. She believed in showing up in small acts done well. The billionaire watched her from a distance, the weight of gratitude settling into resolve. He thought about the structures he had built and the ones he could build differently. He thought about opportunities overlooked because they did not fit a resume or a title. Before leaving, he made sure her manager knew what she had done, not as a performance, but as truth. He left behind more than a generous tip. He left a promise to himself to remember this moment when rooms felt easy and victories felt deserved. He knew he would carry the image of that table, of the quiet courage that saved more than a deal. Weeks later, the project moved forward, creating jobs, forging partnerships, delivering on promises. The billionaire spoke often about collaboration, about humility, about listening. He never told the story as a boast. He told it as a reminder. The waitress continued her work, her life unchanged in the ways that matter most, yet subtly expanded by the knowledge that her voice had mattered in a room of power. Stories like this do not end with applause. They end with a choice. The choice to notice. The choice to step in. The choice to believe that kindness can change outcomes no strategy can guarantee. The billionaire learned that day that wealth could buy many things, but understanding had to be given. The waitress learned that her gifts were real, even if the world had not yet asked for them loudly. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of a moment when someone's quiet courage made a difference, please take a second now to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe so these stories keep finding their way to the people who need them. Before the ending, here's a special request. Comment below with one small act of kindness you've witnessed or offered that changed someone's day, because those moments deserve to be seen. In the end, the restaurant returned to silence, the city to motion, the deal to paper and ink. But something invisible remained, stitched into the lives that had intersected there. A billionaire learned to listen. A waitress learned her worth. And somewhere between them, the world tilted just enough toward grace. I'm Justin, great to meet you. I'm here to help you see, hear, and feel every line. Let's make your next chapter unforgettable.